case. We've got our Kickstarter here. Underneath this cover on this 1987 KX250, we've got our clutch system here. We've got our oil fill cap here. I've done an overview of this motorcycle showing you where to put the oil, how much oil, and some of those specifications. Make sure you check those out. This is your sight glass here. You want to make sure this is in good condition, no cracks or major wear on these seals, so that you can inspect your oil and get that to the proper level there. To remove our Kickstarter here, we've got a 14 millimeter. Go ahead and remove that nut, then we can just go ahead and pull this Kickstarter off of here. This is in very good condition. A lot of times you'll see these splines get worn down, have some damage to them, and then when you slide this on, you've got some serious amount of wobble. This does not have that. Those splines are in great condition. Your Kickstarter gear is in great condition. We've got 8 millimeter bolts around the outside of this clutch cover here. What we have here is your water pump. This underneath here is your impeller. And we've got 3 8 millimeter bolts that need removed here. If we're wanting to drain our cooling system, we've got a 10 millimeter bolt here with a crush washer underneath of it. If you pull this bolt there, a lot of that water is going to come out, or a lot of that coolant is going to come out of our water system, our cooling system on this motorcycle. We've got a gasket here. You want to make sure this surface is cleaned up really well before you go back together. 10 millimeter nut to remove. And this will spin, so I would suggest if you've got an impact, try to use one of those, because you can pull the trigger on one of these and it spins off fairly quickly. If you take a wrench or a socket, try to get that to spin off of there, you're going to have to hold in some spot. You've got potential of breaking a fin off this water pump there, so keep that in mind. I'm now going to finish pulling these 8 millimeter bolts around this clutch cover here. Most of them were already off just to speed things up. We left a couple on there just to show you what we were dealing with there. We've got our valve here. We've got a boot that is covering up this arm. We should be able to leave that valve on there. All right, pulling this off, grab your rubber mallet here, tap on it. That'll allow you to pull that impeller off of there, set those pieces together. And once you've tapped on that, kind of broke that seal free, that gasket there, you're able just to get your fingers in behind there and pull this up. Now I'd like to take and put my thumb on this Kickstarter gear here. A lot of times that'll hold you up. I like to keep that in place down there so we know where those pieces go. Now that is the inside of your clutch cover there. You've got your water pump gear here, and this is what your impeller was sitting on. This is what this impeller and this cover was covering up the other side of this. You've got your valve, and remember when I was tearing apart the top end there, I showed you, you pull this arm here. That's going to move this gear here, this gear that pulls out here. This is for your exhaust valve there. We'll just pull that gear out of there. Now we've got another gasket around here. Make sure those sides are all cleaned up. We'll show you that when we're going back together. Got your entire clutch pack here, and I'm going to show you how to remove that. Grab a 10 millimeter socket and loosen these up. Going back together, do this in a crisscross pattern. And then we'll go ahead and remove these springs so we're not losing any of those. And then I take and pull up on the top plate here. Got that removed. Set that down. Grab a screwdriver and a hammer. And we'll tap on this clip here. This clip actually holds that nut in place. All right, we've got an 1 1/16 socket here to remove this larger nut. I go ahead and hold one of these arms with my thumb here and spin that off. You don't want that clutch spinning. You've got other components in here that could jar out of place if you do that. Then once we get that nut removed, we've got our clutch pack ready to come off of there. What I like to do is take and set our plate back down there, set our springs down, and then all of this can come off together. So we'll go ahead and put these bolts back in. And if you're taking and rebuilding your clutch, you would actually take and pry each plate off individually. And what you would do is, obviously these bolts removed, pull this top plate again, pull the friction and the steel plates out together. I like to have my friction plates soaking in oil. That way they're lubricated going back together, so you're not ever running those dry. And then you put those in the same exact pattern that you pull those apart, and you'll slide the grooves down in here. You won't be able to put those in any other way. And then a lot of times if you order an aftermarket clutch kit, you'll be able to replace these springs at the same time. And those springs wear out, your clutch loses its tension, and your bike won't run quite right. So that is your entire clutch pack assembly. Here is your entire basket. And these baskets tend to get grooved. This one happens to be in really good condition. And you want to make sure that there's no wear or damage to these gears here. You want to make sure that all of these, if you are using these this clutch pack again, make sure that your friction and steel plates are in good condition. Those do warp. I've done several videos on how to check to see if those are warped or not. That's a common issue. If your clutch gets too hot, you'll start warping your steel plates. Now, a lot of times that happens at the same time that your friction plates go bad, because your friction plates then are just wearing essentially metal on metal. It's not metal material, but it gets very, very hot, can warp those plates. Pull the Kickstarter gear out here would be the next step to getting down into our bottom end. We've got a bearing that sits in behind your clutch basket, so I'm going to set those with each other. Also, these parts here that I pulled out, I'm going to set in there. Okay, what I like to do is grab a pair of pliers here very, very carefully so you don't ruin these threads. I'll put actually the teeth of my pliers into the splines of that gear. And you want to make for certain sure that your pliers are not going to slip off of here. You're going to damage those splines. So I take and turn that back. That's going to tighten that spring. You're able to slip that off. What you're doing here is this arm that releases your Kickstarter gear that sits right here, you're actually pulling that away from the back there. So it'd be very, very hard to take and pull this with your fingers. That direction you can take and put a rag underneath of there. I found if as long as I've got pliers with good teeth and I've got a good firm grip on there, this is the best way for me to do it. Now, you putting a grease rag behind there might be the ticket. The problem with that is sometimes you get that to slip, rips right through your grease rag there, and you start damaging those threads. So just be very, very careful doing that. Going back together, I'll show you a couple tricks on getting that done. You want to inspect this, make sure it's in good condition, make sure your ratchet's in good condition there, and all those teeth are in great condition. When you kick that Kickstarter arm, that would typically be up here, this one here sits right here. Kick this down, it's going to kick this gear this way, it's going to engage your idler gear here, it's going to engage your clutch, which engages your crank, which starts your motorcycle. As soon as you let off that arm, it's going to flip back into position here, and that ratchet is no longer going to be connected in the back there. You can see that when it's out, you're no longer engaging that Kickstarter. That's when you push your Kickstarter down, you're actually sitting there spinning this direction and wearing those teeth down. Now, it's not going to, it's this way your teeth doesn't actually grab. The gear is meant to go that direction. So it's not a terrible deal, but you don't want your Kickstarter held down for a long amount of time, or it's going to really heat that gear up and damage that. It's not meant to go in that direction for long periods of time. Minimal amount of time is fine, long periods of time, not good. So you kick that down, it grabs that gear, grabs that idler, grabs that clutch, grabs that crankshaft, starts your motorcycle, let off of it, it's going to go back to the idling position there. That's kind of a quick overview of your Kickstarter gear. Next, I'm going to grab some snap ring pliers here. We've got a snap ring on your idler gear. You've also got a snap ring on your primary gear there. Go ahead and remove that gear, set that aside. Underneath of there, we actually have another snap ring. So keep in mind, if you're splitting your crankcase, you're going to need to remove that snap ring as well. And those they look like the same exact snap ring, so we shouldn't need to keep track of which one goes where. This is a slightly different snap ring, so you will want to keep track of where this one goes. This doesn't actually have holes for your snap ring pliers to fit into. they're just grooves. It makes it sometimes a little more of a challenge to pull off of here. A lot of times what I do if I have a snap ring like this, I'll actually take and put my screwdriver underneath and hold that up. That way I can get my snap ring pliers in there again and get a new grip on it. Pull that off, there's your snap ring there. We'll set that aside. Now we're able to take our primary gear, pull that off. There's your gears there, 2 different gears. This one will need to be lined up. You see a line there. This one doesn't really matter which direction that goes on. We've got our shift mechanism here. We can take and pull this out. This is your shift shaft. This is where the shifter pedal will go on the left-hand side of your motorcycle. We'll wipe that down, make sure those splines are in good condition. Remember, I took an 8mm, pulled that shifter lever off. There's a shift lever there. Those